We're ranking the 4 Fallout Commander Precons from worst to best.
I'm Mia, and I like popping boosters for more than just draft.
I'm Beezy. I like pizza a little too much. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. This is the place to go to buy all of the Fallout singles we're about to talk about, to buy all of the Fallout Precons.
They are great, and you should go buy and sell with them. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
You can use the code
Nerds
to check out and save 5% of your entire order.
That's tax dollars.
That's tax dollars. We're also sponsored by Moxville. There's going to be an ad somewhere. You can't guess where it is. You're a liar. Now, today, we're going to be covering a bunch of things from the new Precons. What are we going to be covering?
We're going in depth with all of these Precons. This is going to be everything you need to know. We're talking about the commander, the game plan, the best reprints, the best new cards, the best budget adds, non-budget adds to the deck, and also cuts, because every commander Precon is going to have random cards that don't belong in the deck at all.
Each of these Precons is worth like different amounts, but to buy all 4, it's $200 on Card Kingdom.
Yes, just keep that in mind as a general price point. We'll start off with the worst of the 4 decks, and this one didn't quite come together. This is Science, $43. The commander is Dr. Madison Lee. She's blue, red, white for a 2/3. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get, an energy counter. These are back for some reason. Tap and pay 1 energy. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample and haste until end of turn. You can tap and pay 3 energy to draw a card, or you can tap and pay 5 to return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. That last one's pretty sick. This deck is all about getting energy, accumulating energy, and then it also has like this artifact sub-theme. I think there's at least 40 artifacts in this deck, so it's definitely consistent in what it wants to do. I think the card quality, it's a little lackluster.
I think thematically it's right to bring back energy because there's like energy weapons in Fallout, but I think for the like Magic universe as a whole, I'm surprised to see that they brought it back, considering that it's just like it never really translated well to multiplayer. But we have to talk about the best reprints. There aren't as many reprints because this is a mostly new cards type of set, but in each deck we're going to talk about 3 of them. For this deck, the best reprints are Lightning Greaves at $6, Panharmonicon at $5, and Glacial Fortress at $2.
Yeah, it's a $43 Precon, and right here it's like $13 of your total. It's fine. There's really not going to be a ton of reprint value in these Precons, and that's okay because they're mostly a vessel to get new cards into your hands. Like, there's like 50 new cards in each Precon, and a lot of the lands are reprints. So most of the value is going to be in the new cards, but we're still going to talk about some of the reprints. The best new cards we got to get to: Brotherhood Scribe, 1 and a white for a 1/3. Metalcraft, tap, you get an energy, activate only if you control 3 or more artifacts, and whenever you get 1 or more energy during your turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This is obviously only for energy decks and essentially nowhere else. But I think it's really interesting that this 2-mana thing can continuously pump your team. It doesn't say once per turn like most of these things do nowadays. It's just like if you get 1 energy, then 1 energy, then 1 energy, you get +3/+3.
I think it's interesting to have like a mana dork for energy. That's just like kind of a weird concept, but I like it. Another great new card is Paladin Dance, Steel Maverick. 2 and a white for a 3/3 with Vigilance and Lifelink, and you can exile it. Each creature you control that's an artifact or human gains indestructible until end of turn. That's like a cool little like Selfless Spirit type impersonation. I'm not mad at this.
This is a nice little take on Selfless Spirit. It protects your artifacts and your humans, so if you're in a humans deck, you can play it there. If you're in an artifact deck, it is an artifact, so that helps trigger your other stuff as well. And Lifelink, we'll take it.
If you need that extra protection, not bad to have. Next is Sentinel Sarah Lyons, 3 red white for a 4/4 with haste. As long as an artifact ETB'd under your control this turn, creatures you control get +2/+2. And whenever she and at least 2 other creatures attack, she deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to target player. I think that's really interesting because, especially in these like equipment type decks, you can stack a bunch of artifacts onto the field, and then just attacking with just a few creatures means you're going to be dealing damage like pretty fast.
Yeah, that static ability is basically always going to be true. You're playing an artifact deck when you have this card. So it +2/+2 kind of static to your team. And then like it's got that Alibu sort of wording, but you just attack with 3 things. And then you just get to zap somebody for like, 15 or something.
I also would love this with like Smothering Tithe because it doesn't say during each of your turns. It's just under your control this turn. So you'd have a static like 2/2 basically.
That's kind of cool. That's a whole new mode to like, do you pay the 2? My creatures get +2/+2 on blocks if you don't. It's like, that's pretty cool. We also have Synth Infiltrator or Synthfiltrator. 3 blue for a 0/0 improvise. It's a clone. Copy of any creature on the battlefield except it's a synth artifact creature in addition to its other types. So this is just clone number 500. Clones are always pretty okay. This one's an artifact and it's got improvise. So that goes in, 5% of decks, and they're going to be happy about it.
I like the improvise mechanic. I'm happy to see that they're bringing it back in new cards. Plus, like, the synth's kind of cool.
Yeah, we got to talk about Vault 13 also. Dweller's Journey. 3 and a white for a saga. Chapter 1. For each player, exile up to 1 target enchantment or creature they control until this thing leaves the battlefield. 2. You gain 2 life and scry 2. And 3. Return 2 cards exiled with Vault to the battlefield under their owner's control and put the rest on the bottom of their owner's libraries. This is not the fastest removal spell, and it's not the most efficient, but it is pretty interesting. You get to zap something for each player. Obviously, you want to take something of your own, too, like a thing you want to flicker. Then at the end, 2 of them go away forever. So you spent 4 mana to eliminate 2 things forever, and 1 thing temporarily, plus whatever thing you put into it will give you another ETB.
We usually don't like O-ring effects, but I am happy to see more sagas coming out because, as we talked about in like Lord of the Rings, Tom Bombadil, all those decks kind of seem the same because there's like all the sagas are pretty similar. There aren't a ton out. So to see more like just new types, I really like that coming out of this.
Yeah, the only bummer about this card is that Chapter 2 is just a complete waste of time. You know, I really don't want to wait that long. If it was just Chapter 1 and then skip to 3, I'd be more excited, but this card's still interesting.
Choosy read ahead.
Let's talk about some budget ads to spruce up this Precon. I think it had a lot of ways to make energy, but we could do a little bit more. I think Decoction Module is going to be great. When our creatures enter, we get energy. That's just a super good little engine. Era of Innovation, very similar. When we cast artifacts, we can get some energy, and then we can cash it in for later. Foundry Inspector, this is like, make all our artifacts cheaper. That seems totally fair. You can even go with like Ethereum Sculptor as well.
Angel of the Runes is a great one in here too because we're going to have a little bit of removal, and Jeskai Ascendancy is going to let us untap our commander so we just get more energy.
Yeah, I like that you can cycle the Angel early and then use the commander to reanimate it later for 5 energy. That seems pretty neat. How about non-budget ads? We got to spend some money now to upgrade this deck.
A little bit of money. One is Aetherworks Marvel. Actually went up in price after this was released. And Gonti's Aetherheart. Both of these are going to play into that energy theme, so we can just utilize that a little bit more.
Yeah, as we sack artifacts and things die, we get Aetherworks Marvel triggers, and then we can spin the wheel, get a spell for free. Gonti's Aetherheart, it's an extra turn spell, but also just it's like the energy maker. Artifacts entering, including it, just give you energy, and it's like you build until you have like 25 energy, then you cash us in for an extra turn and probably win the game.
Yeah, that's really nasty in her. Urza, Lord High Artificer, is also a great one. I mean, this is just nasty on its own, especially with all the artifacts you're going to be getting. You're going to be getting the energy triggers, you're going to be getting the tapping for mana triggers, and you're going to be getting free artifacts. That's just amazing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're playing artifacts? Well, have you considered Urza, Lord High Artificer? Have you also considered Esper Sentinel? Cheap artifact, it triggers Madison Lee, gives you an energy, and then it just gains value over the course of the game. And
Illustrious Wanderglyph. This is like a Tendershoot Dryad type deal, but it actually gives you artifact creatures once per turn.
But now it's time for the cuts, and the problem with this deck, and really all of the Fallout decks, this was also a problem with the Doctor Who decks, is that, like I said, they're more of a vessel for getting a bunch of new cards into our hands, since this isn't like a full set release. So a lot of the Precons are just packed with like cool legends, but they don't necessarily have anything to do with one another. So you're going to end up with stuff like Red Death, Shipwrecker. It just kind of randomly goads. We're not interested in that. We're trying to cast artifacts, make energy, reanimate big artifacts. Arcane Ganon is a looter, but it cares about like humans, and this deck doesn't necessarily care about that, so I think you can just cut it. Rex Cyberhound, cool character, but totally its own deck. Even though it says make energy, this is not worth trying to sneak through just to get 2 energy and then kind of just forget about it for the rest of the game. Nuka-Cola Vending Machine, just a bad card. I think this card's actually just bad. The rest of these legends, you know, they're their own decks, but I don't know what I'm doing with Nuka-Cola Vending Machine. Curie is like a commander again, just for cloning stuff. You know, she wants to clone. And why I put all this effort into building 4 decks within this deck when we can just say I'm the energy deck.
I really love the fact that they are trying to cram in so much story and just all of the things that the fans love, but these are not always synergistic together. Moving on to the next deck, it's Moxfield.com, the best place online to build decks and check out the decks Precon list already.
Yeah, Moxfield has a Wizards of the Coast account where they post official Precon lists. If you want to look up what the actual official science Precon looks like, you have to go to Moxfield Wizards account, and you know that it's not going to be some jabroni out there who just switched out 3 cards and then is saying, this is the science Precon. This just is. Moxfield's got all the best features. You need to check it out.
I love Moxfield. Go build your decks there and go give us a follow.
Okay, the actual number 3 Precon is what?
The actual number 3 is Mutant Menace at $64.99. The commander is the Wise Mothman. 1 blue, green, and a black for a flyer, 3/3. Whenever ETBs are attacked, each player gets a rad counter. Whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, you put a 1/1 counter on each of X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. Rad counters are a type of deal where it's a mill type of sub-theme, but when people mill non-lands, they lose a rad counter and lose a life. So you're trying to keep people with a lot of rad counters so you can mill a lot of cards.
So if I have 5 rad counters, when it comes to untap and I go to my upkeep, I mill 5 cards. Let's say 2 of them are non-lands. That means I lose 2 life and I lose 2 rad counters. So I still have 3. Kind of confusing. Ultimately, this is going to mean that the Mothman is going to pump up creatures and get more powerful as everybody's continuously accumulating rad counters. That's what this deck wants to do, is proliferate, get more rad counters on everybody. Since they don't all go away every upkeep, people are probably going to end up keeping a few, which means it's great fuel for the fire. We're just going to keep putting stuff on and then divide our counters up and hopefully go over the top.
I like the fact that they are experimenting with more player counters, because poison can be very punishing to some.
Rad's pretty chill.
Rad is pretty chill, but I also think that it doesn't play very nicely with standard mill. Certain things, I think of Tasha's Hideous Laughter when I think of milling people. And I think Rad is its own type of thing, because you want proliferate cards, and that's not usual in your standard Bruvac deck, for instance.
Yeah, I think we're straying away from a mill win condition, and we're using mill to bolster our game plan. So let's go to the best reprints. These ones were a little bit better than the Science Precon, probably due to the higher price of this Precon. But we've got Guardian Project at $10, Inexorable Tide at $9. Surprising, I thought it was 5 cents. And also Branching Evolution at $6. Those are all pretty good cards. They're going to help for this deck. Branching Evolution maybe could just come out of this deck. Branching Evolution is nice because it doubles the counters that Mothman puts, because you can only put 1 at a time. So then when you're putting 2 at a time.
I really like that too. But there are some amazing new cards in this deck. One of them is Watchful Radstag, 2 and a green for a 2/2 with Evolve. When it evolves, you create a token that's a copy of it.
That's pretty sick.
That is. I love making tokens and just a bunch of random stuff, so this is super cool.
This card just has pseudo combo Scoot Swarm written all over it. I feel like if there's a way to make this creature stronger or have a consistent way to evolve it, you can get a bajillion tokens in a turn. This thing, it looks pretty sweet.
That looks like a lot of fun. Another one is Contaminated Drink. X, blue, and a black for an instant. You draw X cards and you get half X rad counters rounded up. So it hurts you a little bit, but you do get the card advantage. What do you think about this?
I think it's just an efficient rate. It's X and 2 mana, instant speed, draw X. We don't really have that, and you do get some rad counters, but realistically, if you get 5 rad counters, it means you're going to lose 5 life over the course of the game. And paying 12 mana to draw 10 and lose 5 eventually, that seems fine to me.
I like that. Another one is Rad Storm, 3 and a blue for an instant, proliferate and storm. I think this is maybe the most expensive card coming out of the set, at least according to pre-release prices. It's the one that I knew had to go in my Atraxa deck.
Yeah, it's really specific, but I think certain decks, I think of Mizzix too. You proliferate your experience and then you storm off and then you cast whatever. I think there's 5 to 10 decks this goes in where it's fantastic, and everybody else should just sell it for $10. Now that we've been graced by Amber's presence and she won't get out of the way, we have Harold and Bob. First, Newman's 2 and a green for a 3/3 Vigilance Reach. When it dies, if it was a creature, return to the battlefield. It's an aura enchantment with Enchant Forest you control, and Enchanted Forest has tapped to add 3 mana of any one color. You get 2 rad counters, and Harold and Bob loses all other abilities. It's like a weird overgrowth. I think you need sack outlets in your deck to make sure that this can just be a ramp spell. But I think another version of overgrowth that actually gives you a little bit of bonus. I don't think it's all bad to have rad counters. We want to mill. Milling's fine. And losing life in a 40 life format, I'm not going to cry about losing 6 life off of this over the course of the game.
This is I think this is really fun, especially if you do have sack outlets like you mentioned, because the immediately pays for itself if you can sacrifice it. I think this is a really cool card.
Definitely interesting. We also have Alpha Deathclaw, one of the first cards from the set spoiled. Probably also one of the best. It's 6 mana, 6/6 Menace Trample, ETB, or when it becomes monstrous, destroy target permanent. And it's got Monstrosity 4 for 7. That's really expensive. Mostly think of it as 6 mana, huge creature, kind of rumbles pretty well, and it just destroys the best thing. Move over Meteor Golem, right? And then if you happen to have 1,000,000 mana, you can do it again. That's mostly upside, though. I'm just looking at 6 mana, 6/6, kill a thing.
Deathclaws in the game are so scary, especially when you are first starting out. So I really do like the fact that they played into this, and there's multiple times where you can destroy stuff. But we have some budget ads to add. First off is Evolution Stage. We want to proliferate. We're going to play lands. That's great. Flux Channeler. We're going to cast non-creature spells. We want to proliferate. Also great. And Experimental Augury. We want a little bit of card selection. And for 2 mana plus having the proliferate effect stapled on, that is just a really good rate, especially early.
Yeah, it's good for the flavor. Also, Mothman only puts 1 counter, and that's kind of enough to get started, right? Once we get that started on all of our creatures, we can proliferate, and now it's like Mothman's putting multiples on every time we do anything. Evolution Sage can really just go off, especially. As for the mill, you actually don't have to care about rad counters at all, or proliferate at all. You could just play a Mothman mill deck. So if you want like Dread Summons, each player mills X. Mothman checks the number of cards milled and the number of non-lands to divide counters around. So that's pretty cool. Also, Fractured Sanity, just 3 mana, mill 14. Or you can cycle it to get a cantrip out of it and have them mill 4.
But moving on to non-budget ads, one of them is Vorneclex Monstrous Raider. I can never completely realize how expensive this card is, but it says you get double counters and you can put double counters on things, and all of your opponents can only put half counters on things.
Yeah, so you're like double ratting them. You're double +1ing your creatures. They can't get rad themselves. They have to wait till we give it to them.
Another one is Mesmeric Orb. Whenever opponents become untapped, their controller mills that many cards. This is just a really good card. I like it in a few types of decks.
Yeah, this is going to trigger Mothman a lot of times. So is Breach the Multiverse. Not only is this an amazing card, gets you a 4-for-1, helps you dominate the game by itself, but you also get a bunch of counters on whatever you put out.
Staff of Completion is another great one. It has a lot of effects, but mostly we're going to be using that Proliferate one. And Rise of the Dark Realms. There's going to be so much stuff in your graveyard and everyone else's. Why not just take it for yourself?
Yeah, if we're putting all that effort into putting rad counters on them and proliferating, and they're going to be milling all that on their upkeep, then let's take advantage. Take everything at once. I like Rise of Dark Realms. It's a cool, flavorful finisher. But that brings us to the cuts, and I'm thinking Fraying Sanity, despite kind of being on theme with milling, it only affects 1 player. And I don't even know if I'd play this in a dedicated mill deck, let alone a deck who's incidentally milling to get triggers on Mothman. Strength Bobblehead, spoiler alert, we're pretty much going to cut every Bobblehead we can, unless there's a bunch of legends that don't synergize at all. It is a 3-mana rock, but clearly Bobbleheads is supposed to be its own deck, and then you're like, hey, here's a couple in each precon, take them all, buy all the precons, take out all the Bobbleheads and build a different deck with it. Power Fist is the same way. We're just not interested with this particular deck. And then Cathedral Acolyte, Glowing One, just some more cards. I think these ones were just kind of subpar. They don't seem that powerful. And so when we're upgrading, we can take out these cards and put in a lot more of the proliferate bangers.
Moving on to the number 2 precon, it's Scrappy Survivors at $50. The commander is Dog Meat Ever Loyal, not to be confused with Yoshimaru Ever Faithful. Red, green, white for a 3/3. When it ETBs, you mill 5, then return an aura or equipment from your graveyard to your hand. Whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, you create a junk token.
Okay, so it works for every creature. We want to get auras and equipment on our things. This is another merging. Another green-white X commander that merges auras and equipment. I'm cool with that. It's got a little bit of a mill sub-theme, so it really probably loves those Mantle of the Ancients or Replenish if you upgrade this deck and you want to go all enchantments. That's kind of cool. You can flicker them. I like what Dogmeat's got going on. How'd you feel about the deck?
I think it's pretty good. I do like the auras and equipment type deals. I also do like the addition of junk tokens, because junk tokens just say you can sack it and just exile the top of your library and you can play it. So I do like the fact that you're giving a little bit of card advantage to these colors that normally have trouble getting cards.
Yeah, let's go to the best reprints. $10 for Heroic Intervention. We have $3 for Blasphemous Act and $3 for Sun Petal Grove. So Heroic Intervention, they threw us a bone. Ha ha ha. That's a nice one. I think the rest of them sort of filler level precon reprints, but that's cool. Just sell the Heroic Intervention, don't play it, and then have a good little money in your pocket.
It's a precon. We're looking more for synergy when they're right out of the box than just Heroic Intervention. But onto the best new cards. I think this next one is my favorite out of this deck. It's Inventory Management. Red and white for an instant with split second. For each aura and equipment you control, you can attach it to a creature you control. That's pretty strong, and I can see it in a lot of those Boros Equipments decks.
Yeah, be a little careful with this card because this is not worth a card. So in order for it to do anything, you have to have enough auras and equipments in play to move around and have the moving around actually matter. So just be careful with this, but this can be a pretty sick blowout.
Yeah, I think that especially if you have a lot of artifacts or with like very high equip costs for 2 mana, you can just like slap it on. That's a pretty good rate if you are in a dedicated deck.
Or if you have like protection stuff, then this can double as an emergency protection spell. If you have a Spectral Ward on something, or if you have like a Sword of X and Y, you can move it around in response to targeting and be like, nope, it fizzles.
It's not bad, so I really do think that we're going to be seeing maybe a little bit more of this in those Boros equipment decks. Next is Silver Shroud Costume. 2 for an artifact that with flash. When it ETBs, attach it to target creature you control. That creature gains Shroud until end of turn, and the equipped creature can't be blocked. I like this because it's kind of an impression of Nurok's Stealth Suit, which I really like, but having that little bit of surprise, 2 mana is not a ton to keep up, and just can't be blocked, can be really good in like Voltron type decks.
This feels like power crept, Whisper Silk Cloak a little bit. It costs 3 to equip, which is a lot, and you only get Shroud once, but I think you can use the Shroud as like a little bit of an instant speed trick. I'm not in love with this card, but I think 2 mana, flash, auto equips, can't be blocked. I'm already kind of interested in that, so equipment decks are like this. Next up is Pip-Boy 3000, 1 mana artifact. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, choose 1. You draw the discard, put a counter on it, or untap up to 2 target lands, and it equips for 2. I'm already looking at like 1 mana artifact, equip for 2, untap 2 lands. This could be like turning your creature into an aggressive mana dork with a couple other upsides.
I really like this. I think this is kind of spiking in price too because of its versatility. But that 2 target lands is really nice drawing and discarding, especially in colors that might have a little bit of trouble with that. And the counter is just, if you can't utilize the target land thing, or if you just have a creature with lifelink, it's not a bad mode to have stapled on for a 1 mana artifact.
Yeah, pre-war Formal Wear, 2 and a white for an artifact. ETB, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield and attach this to it. And all it does really for equip 3 is give equip creature +2/+2 vigilance. So use this as a reanimate spell. If you're playing this and not reanimating, you shouldn't be playing it. You should just hold it in your hand until it does, something, because that's the spell effect of this that doesn't give anything once it's already out.
I think it's really cool to have that mill type effect and then be introducing artifacts that bring stuff back. That's like a new take on it. We haven't seen this yet. I think that's what makes this deck like kind of spicy. Another great new card in here is Idolized, 1 and white for an enchantment. When this creature attacks alone, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of non-land permanents you control. I like this because it doesn't say like non-token non-lands or something. So if you're getting a lot of junk tokens or whatever, this creature can get really big.
Kind of feels like another copy of All That Glitters, that type of thing. The other thing I like about this card is it says whenever this creature attacks alone, so if you're a Voltron deck, which Idolized probably goes in already, you can use Seize the Day, give your commander an extra combat, and now it gets like double or triple the bonuses, and people are super, super dead to that.
That's so nasty.
Time for some budget ads. Unfinished Business is a great way to reanimate something. Dogmeat's milling our grave and helping us actually get a little bit of selection on this, so we might get a big creature that we can reanimate early. And then obviously we have artifacts, auras, and equipments to bring back.
SRAM Senior Edificer is another good one. We need cards to keep our engine going. We're going to be casting a lot of equipment and auras and stuff, so let's put them on the battlefield and get those.
Yeah, Danitha is a way to bring those stuff back. Danitha's always got she's always cooking up something with equipment. I love Danitha. Forge Anew, this is like a way to reanimate an equipment, right?
Yeah, and Nettlecyst is going to be great in this deck because you're going to get +1/+1 on a creature for each artifact or enchantment you control. And so you're going to be making junk tokens. You're going to have the equipments and you're going to have auras. So this is going to get so big so quickly.
It's funny because I never care about that enchantment part on Nettlecyst. You should never put Nettlecyst into an Enchantress deck. But if you're an auras and equipment deck, it does just boost more than you think it would.
But it's time for the non-budget ads. One of them is Sigarda's Aid. You can cast auras and equipments as though they had flash, and you get free equip costs when they ETB.
Sword of the Animus. It's an equipment that ramps. You can play it early. It impacts the game going forward as it continuously ramps you. It's hard to stop if they can't answer the sword. Then you're just going to keep sending dummies out, ramping you, and it just sort of like snowballs as the game goes on. Fighter class is a way to search for an equipment. Halvar is going to be a way to give all your stuff double strike as a static. But if you really need an equipment, Halvar is an equipment on the backside. Maybe it even works with Dogmeat as you kind of remove commander attacks from him. If he were to ever die, he just goes back to your hand and you just play him again.
I like that. And Galadriel's Dismissal is great. Either it's protection for your creatures if they need to phase out, or you can just phase out somebody else's creatures and swing in for the win.
Kind of brutal. Got to make room for those ads, though, and we're going to do that with cuts. Single combat, I don't think this card is very good at all. It's not my first choice. It's not even my 10th choice for a whiteboard wipe, so just forget it.
5 mana is a lot also. Breakdown is also not a great one in here. It's 3 mana, and you destroy an artifact or enchantment, and you get a junk. I do not think that's worth it.
But this deck isn't even, like, crazy about junk. It wants auras and equipment, so that's, like, forget it. Agility bobblehead, it's another same bobblehead thing. It's its own deck, forget it. Megaton's Fate, this is, like, 6 mana to destroy an artifact, and you get, like, some treasures and rad counters, or you can deal 8 damage to each creature. I like the choice. I think this is a flavorful card. One of the problems, though, is I am going to read this as Megatron's Fate. Megatron also canonically in Magic the Gathering, so very common mistake.
I think people are going to get that really confused coming up. And Perception Bobblehead. This is another bobblehead thing. Stop putting bobbleheads into like each little deck.
Yeah, just make a bobblehead deck. They could have done that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But that brings us to our number 1 deck, the best out of all the Fallout Precons. What do we got?
Our number 1 deck is Hail Caesar or Kaiser, depending on who you talk to. It's $60, and the commander is Caesar, Legion's Emperor. 1 red, white, black for a 4/4. Whenever you attack, you could sack another creature. When you do, you choose 2. You either create 2 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. You can draw a card and lose a life, or it deals damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. So you want a bunch of little dudes. You want to be attacking a lot, and you want to make sure they're kind of expendable so you can get these cool effects.
Can someone tell me, maybe I missed this, why do the tokens he creates have haste? They're tapped and attacking. They don't, and then haste isn't going to matter the next time. They can never not be attacking. So I don't understand why they have haste. Just a personal thing. I don't know.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's closer to like a flavor thing. There's been a lot of flavor things in this set where it's like I don't think that needed to happen in terms of like
gameplay.
But in terms of actual lore, it might make a little more sense.
But I mean, like whenever you attack, I can just sacrifice a creature, get 2 dudes, and draw a card as a bare minimum, and then also I can zap somebody in the late game for like a bunch of damage while doing like 2 of these at a time. This card's sick.
This is nasty. Plus the fact that it is a 4/4, those are pretty good stats in just for 4 mana. Like it's gonna come down pretty early in the game. You're going to get those triggers, and
like
it's just,
right away.
Yeah, it says whenever you attack, you don't even have to attack with him.
Yeah, I think that's gonna carry this deck. It's probably a big reason why this deck's number 1. But this deck's just kind of got a unified theme of making tokens and getting some value out of it.
I also think this has the best reprints in all of the decks. There is Skull Clamp, $7, not bad because we're going to be making a bunch of useless guys anyways and getting cards out of them. Pitiless Plunderer, they're going to be dying, we're going to be getting treasures. And Ruinous Ultimatum, this is just a one-sided Mardu board wipe.
These 3 cards are not only good reprints, but they are just extremely powerful. Like, Pitiless Plunderer is a combo machine. It doesn't have to have combos, but it just enables so much stuff. Ruinous Ultimatum is so good that people say it's unfun, and Skullclamp is literally like top 50 cards on the format. So really, like, those are help boost this deck's power level and the reprint equity. Best new cards, Wild Wasteland. Check it out. 2 red for an enchantment. Skip your draw step, but you impulse draw twice on your upkeep. Kind of goofy. As long as your cards are cheap, though, I think this should work out for you.
I like this. I want to try this in a deck. I'm not exactly sure which one, but I do think this is going to provide some card advantage. And for 3 mana,
definitely like a mono red type thing.
Not bad. The next one should be a battle, but they can't do double-sided cards in Precons. So this is the Battle of Hoover Dam, 3 and a white for an enchantment. When it ETBs, you choose NCR or Legion. For NCR, at the beginning of your end step, you return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Or Legion, whenever a creature you control dies, you put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. I really like the finality counters. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I like the fact that they're playing around with it.
All right, so what is Legion?
Legion is the kind of faction that Caesar runs. They're like not good people. They like keep slaves. They kill people for fun, that type of deal.
Right, because I know NCR is not Chemical Romance. I just wasn't sure what Legion was.
Absolutely. Yeah. The New California Republic definitely is not Chemical Romance.
Next up is our preview card, actually. Yes Man, Personal Securitron. 2 and a white for a 2/2. You can tap him, target opponent gains control of him, then you put a quest counter, and you draw 2 cards. And then when he leaves the battlefield, its owner creates a tapped 1/1 white soldier. For each quest counter on it, the owner is you, always. So I like this as a commander. I like this as a goofy little humble defector. It can shake up games. It is white card draw. You can flicker it so that it comes back to your side. Just a cool card.
It's flavorful. It gets you card advantage. I like it. Securitron Squadron is also a great one. 1 and a white for a 2/2 with Squad 3. Vigilance. Whenever a creature token ETB is under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is great in this deck. Plus, in the late game, if you can just squad it up and you have like 4 copies of this, Squad is an incredibly powerful mechanic, and I love to see that they're returning to it.
I like Squad. I really do. I like that the tokens are going to get the own counters. So if you do Squad that's twice, you're going to have 3 total copies of it. And the tokens are going to enter with 3 counters each, so they get bigger as you go. And they have Vigilance, so that's nice. Wasteland Raider, 2 black for a 4/3. Squad, 2. We brought back Squad. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. This one's interesting. At a 4-mana 4/3, it's below rate. I don't really want to play that. But 6 mana for 2 4/3s, and everybody sacrifices 2 creatures, that can start to feel kind of dirty. Once you go to sacrifice 2, we've seen with Liliana Dreadhorde General, you're getting a lot of good stuff.
A lot of your stuff is going to be expendable too, and you're going to be getting like profit from it, like with Pitiless Plunder. I really like this, especially in this deck.
Yeah, the scalability, I think, is what's going to make this pretty playable. I wonder if this is going to play better than Flashback Marauder even.
But onto some budget ads. One of them is Idol of Oblivion. We're going to be making tokens. Let's get some card draw out of it.
I love this card. It's totally fair. You can't be mad at Idol of Oblivion. It's just a good tokens card. Also, Benevolent Offering. I love me some tokens. This can save you from a combat. I love this so much better than a fog. It can bolster your life total, whether you're ahead or behind. It can catch you up or put you ahead or make deals. It just kind of does everything.
We're going to have so many disposable dudes. We're going to get so much life off that. Impact Tremors. We're going to have people coming in left and right, all these soldiers. Let's put a little bit of damage from them.
Yeah, Rabble Rousing is like kind of underrated, I think. I know it's easy play, but if you haven't played this card, it makes so many tokens. And when you pair it with an Impact Tremors or something like that, you're really going to come close to winning unless they do something like right away.
Also, Ishin, 2 heavens as 1. You're going to get double attack triggers. Caesar's attack trigger is already very, very powerful. So being able to zap people late in the game or just getting multiple cards,
that's pretty sick.
This is going to be really good in this deck.
But all right, let's say you walked around on the street and you found $50 and you picked it up and you said, I'm going to put it towards this deck. Anointed Procession is probably one of your best bets because it doubles all of your token production. That's just kind of nuts.
Adeline Resplendent Cathar is also going to be great. You're going to have so many creatures, so she's going to be really big, and she's going to make them for basically free.
And Caesar says whenever you attack, you can sacrifice a creature, right?
Yeah.
So if you have both of these, they both trigger whenever you attack, even if neither of them are attacking. And so you make the tokens first with Adeline, then sack one of them for Caesar's ability.
That's really nasty. That's so much value. Mondrak Glory Dominus is also a great one. You're going to make extra tokens. Plus, I do like the fact that you can sack stuff to make him indestructible, and you're going to have a lot to sack.
Yeah, you can even use him as like a weird faux sack outlet if you really want to, if you need creatures to die for some reason. We just mentioned this. Liliana Dreadhorde General makes tokens. We have a bunch of expendable tokens, so they're going to cash in for cards. I mean, this plus Pitiless Plunder is just starts to be like, oh, you draw a card and get a treasure whenever your dudes die.
That's going to be so good.
And Clever Concealment, which is one of my favorite cards that I have not put into a deck yet, despite knowing that it is bonkers. It makes all your permanents, non-land permanents phase out, and has Convoke, so it really can just come out of nowhere.
It's going to be basically free for us, minus a little mana here or there. But we do have to get to some cuts, and a lot of these are going to be
These are pretty stinky cuts.
Flavorful ones. Assemble the Legion, we get it. Caesar's Legion, we get it. But
this card is slow.
This card is slow. It's not going to make as many tokens as you want it to make. So just keep it, for the good memories of the game, but not in the deck itself.
Yeah, as MCR once said, thanks for the memories.
Another one is Black Market. We don't like this card. In general, it's a win more card. It's going to just you wait until I untap and a bunch of stuff died. I don't like waiting that long.
Yeah, I think this is probably a card I would cut from. I think we just talked about this in a video, right? We would cut it from every deck, let alone this deck. So
I hate it.
We also have Charisma and Luck Bobblehead. Again, 2 bobbleheads for the bobblehead deck. Go do that, and I will stop saying bobblehead. And finally, Mr. House, President and CEO. Cool character, cool card. Just kind of his own deck, right? We want to roll dice. This deck is not equipped to roll dice at all.
Absolutely. It's super cool. I want to see decks made out of this, but not here.
So I love what the Fallout decks are doing. They're super stuffed, though, unlike Precons from normal sets, with a lot of cards that don't work with the deck. So once you get those cards out, I think there's probably 10 to 15 per deck. You could definitely end up with really strong, focused decks.
Absolutely. But we're going to be sending you to where?
A Precon video. It's the Murders at Karlov's Manor's Precons.